Okay, hi everyone. It's now week 2 of the Sling TSi build, the Empennage kit. Yeah. So I started off with I was working on the elevator in the last video. So I tried to finish off the skin on that, just click on everything together. The trim tab and the piano hinge was quite interesting. The piano hinge itself, I had a safety wire on both ends so that in case the pin during flight it shouldn't just pop out. So I think I've seen some of the other builders doing the same on YouTube, so I'm gonna have done the same. The side trim bits, the fiberglass elements would need to be added and match drilled. So you got these two little skin elements which needs to be clear in place and then match drilled to the holes before you do the dimpling on those skins. So it's the first time I've been using those silver clicos because I've initially drilled them out at 2mm holes, 2 or probably 2.5mm holes, and have been using those silver clicos. And then once the holes have been drilled, then I've been upsizing them to the 3.2mm as per the manual, and then you have to then countersink them. Yeah, once all that was done, I'd skinned the horizontal stabilizer again just using clicos. Nothing's riveted down, only the frame of the horizontal stabilizer and the elevator have been riveted. Everything else is just clicoed in place. It needs to be kept level, I think, the horizontal stabilizer. Before you judge it, look for the final alignment. So I need to decide on a setup how I'm going to do that when I finally check that alignment. So the build manual also calls for that at this stage, to go through and bring up the elevator assembly up against the horizontal stabilizer and put them together. Again, everything is just still clear in place, so you can still make some adjustments now if there is a slight misalignment. Obviously, the leading edge of the elevator is not riveted or clear, and you can't do that because you can't bring them close enough if you do that sides or that edge. Yeah, it's pretty much sitting on two pieces of wooden blocks at level, and then the next step was to put two AM3 bolts on those hinges so that so you can see the two bolts are put on both sides to check for the alignment. And the fit is quite good. Obviously, they are too close now here in this section because the elevator is not riveted down. The leading edge of the elevator, but the finish on the sides, I mean, that's what basically we're looking for. When the horizontal stabilizer is level, both sides of the elevator should sit flush with that on the skin, on the top of the skin, and it is pretty much, it was pretty much flush. The gap, there was a bit of a gap. I think that's part of it. I mean, the gap was even on both sides, so if it's supposed to be that, then it should be okay. So I clamped one side to see if the other side is level, and it wasn't looking that bad. Again, before I rivet, I think I need to rivet the horizontal stabilizer first, make sure it's nice and level and straight, and then I think I can do the elevator after that, making sure this alignment is still okay. Yeah, so on those hinges we can see the elevator now moving alongside the fixed horizontal stabilizer. Finally looking like some aircraft parts. But as far as this build, I can't progress this much further because I need my inspector to visit and inspect and sign off these parts. So I've left them and then moved on to the next piece of the puzzle, which is the vertical stabilizer. first step was quite simple, just dimple a few parts. So got that started, and in the meantime just took off the skin of the horizontal stabilizer, found a place for that on my shed wall. Same with the elevator, I didn't take off the elevator skins because it's got lots of ribs and lots of little bits inside. It's easier just leaving everything clear-coated and in place, so that when the time comes I can get back to riveting that quite quickly. I still need to mount all the counterweights inside, but everything's been dimpled and ready to go. And then started working on the vertical stabilizer. It's pretty straightforward. I think most of the holes that needs to be dimpled could be done using the DRDT2 dimpler. So it's pretty easy thing. And I occasionally do quality checks in terms of take that one 3.2mm countersunk rivet and make sure that it goes through that hole and it sits nice and flush. The longer spar section, or the spar section on the vertical stabilizer, again that can be dimpled. You don't need to countersink any of those bits. The skin also is I think that's the biggest piece of skin that you've got, I mean, in terms of width, but it's still easily accessible. All the holes to dimple on the dimpler, the DRDT2 dimpler. Again, you have to make sure there are some holes that shouldn't be dimpled, so I did mark all the holes with a Sharpie before I went ahead and dimpled all the holes that was supposed to be dimpled. Yeah, once the vertical stabilizer, all the dimpling was done, then I thought I'll just put everything together with Clecos rather than rivet any parts. There are a few riv nuts to be done, first step, so I haven't done that step. I'll leave that for later. I did find another mistake, or maybe correction on the manual. It calls for, I think, 14 riv nuts, but I believe it's only 12 because the hole that's on the 7th hole doesn't really match if a riv nut should go through that. So I need to get that checked from the factory or one of the other builders to see what they've done. So there are 7 holes that should take riv nuts, and then there are 2 on the bottom section. So in total there should be 8 riv nuts either side, but the manual calls for 9 on either side, so I need to get that checked before I do anything. But the skin fits on really well, there's no issues. These skins, both the vertical stabilizer and the rudder, seems to be a much better fit to the frame. Again, I think there are more riv nuts in this assembly, and I haven't done any riv nuts yet, so that would be an interesting step. There are 2 on the side on the vertical stabilizer. Then worked on the rudder frame. Again, this also came together quite quickly, probably about half an hour to put together the rudder frame and Cleco everything in place. Did the top fiberglass bit where you mount the strobe light. That needs a little bit of work before it's mounted and match drilled. Again, the whole frame can be Clecoed in place. I think it's good to Cleco as far as possible, so that you can make sure that everything matches up, lines up, and the skin on the rudder as well is a perfect line up. There's not a single hole out of place, so I'll be very, very happy when I'll have to rivet those elements. So it's only the horizontal stabilizer skins that are left, and I've got still the counterweights on all the sections to be added on. So I've just been writing with a Sharpie marker that don't forget to add these, because you don't want to rivet any skins and find those counterweights have not been added. Other than that, everything is pretty much the most I can get to. So here I've done already the match through the top of the top fiberglass element for the rudder, and try to bring them up close together with the vertical stabilizer. Again, I cannot really check the alignment because you have to rivet the rudder so that they can come close enough and to mount on the hinges, or at least you have to rivet the frame before you can do that. And ideally I just don't want to do more work, and the inspector hasn't signed off, so I'm going to leave it at that. There are a few things on the rudder. One thing I think on the manual, it calls for dimpling 9 holes. The 9 holes, and then 7 holes on the fiberglass side. I think in the manual it calls for 9, but it should be actually only 7. And then I use the countersunk bit on those 7 holes on the matching on the fiberglass tip as well, and the tip matches up quite nicely to the skin. It's quite a good fit, so I'm happy with that, how the rudder and the vertical stabilizer setup is. So again, it's all clear coat in place, nothing's riveted, so if there is any alignment issues I can always adjust. But yeah, that's as far as I can do now. So next time it's working on the wing section.